Ever feel like you're navigating a minefield? Like all these hidden agendas, unspoken rules, it's like everyone else got the manual on power dynamics except you.
I know that feeling.
Right. So today we're cracking open that manual. We're doing a deep dive into Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.
Oh, a fascinating choice, that one.
It's a controversial one, that's for sure. CEOs swear by it, probably a few, supervillains too.
Maybe.
But don't worry, this isn't about turning you into like a Machiavellian mastermind or anything.
No, no, not at all. What's so interesting about this book, especially the preface,
Yeah.
is how it kind of throws down a challenge right off the bat.
Mm,
We live in a world where, we say we value fairness. We even celebrate the appearance of being powerless sometimes.
right.
But is that the reality?
Yeah.
Are we all kidding ourselves?
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Could it be that those who shy away from acknowledging power are actually playing a much deeper game?
It's like those perfectly curated Instagram feeds.
Exactly.
All sunshine and success, but behind the scenes?
A whole lot of strategizing going on.
Right, to craft that perfect image.
Greene calls this the courtly paradox. He uses the historical example of, court dynamics. Back then, overt ambition. That could get your head chopped off, literally.
Yikes.
Lavish parties, elegant dances, but behind those fans, whispers of alliances, rivalries, mastering the art of subtle influence. It was everything.
So like those period dramas where it's all smiles and curtsies, but secretly they're plotting each other's downfall.
Precisely. And Greene's point is that today's world, with all its emphasis on being democratic, woke, it's not so different.
Oh, interesting.
We're told to be nice, play by the rules, but ignoring the reality of power dynamics, that can leave you vulnerable. It's like walking into a negotiation without realizing there's a whole other conversation happening under the table.
It's true. And that's where this whole non-player idea comes in.
Yes.
The person who's like, oh, I'm above all these power games. I gotta say, sometimes I meet people like that and I think, are they incredibly naive or are they incredibly cunning?
Greene would say it's the latter. He argues that this, claiming to be above it all, it's often a strategy in itself.
Wow.
Think about it. Someone constantly downplaying their achievements. On the surface, humble, self-deprecating. But it can trigger sympathy, support, subtly shifting the power in their favor.
Oh, sneaky. It's like that friend who always forgets their wallet, so you end up paying.
Right.
After a while, it's like, are you really that forgetful or is this a calculated move?
And that's what makes these dynamics so fascinating and potentially dangerous if we're not aware of them. Another example Greene gives is this insistence on absolute equality.
Okay.
Sounds admirable on the surface, right?
Yeah.
But it ignores the reality that people have different skills, ambitions, and yes, levels of power.
It's true.
This can actually benefit those who've mastered the art of appearing powerless, all while they're busy pulling strings behind the scenes.
It's like wearing camouflage, but instead of blending into the jungle, you're blending into the boardroom.
Yes.
Appearing harmless, righteous even, while you're advancing your own agenda.
And maintaining that facade, according to Greene,
Ah.
takes serious emotional mastery.
Okay.
He's adamant that reacting emotionally, especially with anger, is like handing over your power on a silver platter.
It's like that saying, never send an email when you're angry.
Right.
In this case, it's never make a power move when you're fuming.
Exactly. In that heated moment, you're not thinking strategically, you're reacting instinctively. And that's what your opponent wants. True power, according to Greene, requires detachment, being able to step back from that heat of the moment, analyze the situation objectively.
So less about brute force, more about being like a strategic chess player.
Yes.
Thinking several moves ahead.
Exactly.
But how do we even begin to develop that kind of strategic thinking? That's where learning from the past comes in, right? Greene talks a lot about analyzing our mistakes, the mistakes of others.
He does, and that's where his use of historical examples is so insightful. He doesn't just lay out these laws, he grounds them in real-world examples, showing how they've played out across centuries and cultures.
So it's like having access to this secret archive of power plays.
Yes.
From like the courts of Renaissance Italy to the battlefields of ancient China.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like having a front row seat to history's greatest power struggles, complete with commentary, analysis. And that analysis is key.
Right.
Because it's not just about what happened, it's about understanding why. Why did certain strategies succeed? Why did others backfire? What motivated the players? What were their strengths, their weaknesses?
It's about human nature, really.
Exactly. By studying these historical parallels, Greene believes we can learn invaluable lessons for navigating the power dynamics of our own lives.
So it's not just memorizing a list of rules, it's developing this deep understanding of human behavior, how ambition, insecurity, fear, all those messy human emotions have driven power dynamics throughout history.
Precisely.
And with that understanding, we can start to anticipate those dynamics in our own lives. Maybe even learn to navigate them with a little more, well,
Well, a
finesse.
little more finesse, yes.
We've been talking about these power dynamics through the lens of history, and
Yeah.
I have to admit, this whole courtly intrigue thing, it makes me think of those elaborate costumes they used to wear,
Mhm.
all that velvet and lace.
Each,
Talk about the
yeah,
power of appearances.
yes.
But I'm guessing Greene's take on this goes way beyond just fashion choices.
Absolutely.
Right.
He would probably say those fashion choices, they were strategic decisions,
Oh, wow.
carefully calculated to project this image of wealth and status and influence.
Mm.
And he'd be right.
Okay.
Think about it.
Yeah.
We all make judgments about people based on their appearance,
It's true.
whether it's their clothes, their body language,
Yeah.
even their Instagram feed these days.
Yeah, for sure.
And those judgments, they influence how we interact with them,
Right.
how much power we're willing to give them.
So it's not just about vanity, it's about understanding
Yeah.
that how we present ourselves
Yes,
sends a message,
it does.
whether we intend it to or not.
Exactly, exactly. Greene isn't advocating for just deceit or manipulation.
Okay.
He's highlighting a reality
Right.
of human behavior.
Okay.
We are wired to respond to visual cues,
Hmm.
to make these snap judgments based on what we see.
Okay.
And those judgments, however unfair they may seem, can have a real impact
Right.
on our lives.
Yeah.
So the question becomes,
Yeah.
how do we become more aware of the signals we're sending
Right.
and how others are perceiving them?
It's like that saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Yes.
But it's not even just about making a good impression, it's about making the right impression
Exactly.
for the situation.
Think of it like this.
Okay.
You wouldn't wear a suit to a backyard barbecue, would you?
No.
Or show up to a job interview in your pajamas.
Right.
Different situations call for different versions of ourselves.
Okay.
It's about adapting your presentation
Right.
to align with the context, the people that you're dealing with.
It's almost like we're all actors on a stage,
Yes.
putting on different costumes, playing different roles,
Exactly.
then on the scene.
And just like in theater,
Okay.
timing.
Yes.
Timing is everything.
Right.
And this is where Greene's emphasis on patience comes in.
Okay.
He sees impatience as a major weakness
Mm.
in the game of power.
Which makes sense because when you're impatient, you're more likely to just make these rash decisions.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
You're so focused on getting what you want in the moment
Right?
that you don't think about the long-term consequences.
Precisely.
Right.
Greene argues that true power requires the ability to delay gratification, to resist that urge to react immediately,
Okay.
even when you're provoked.
Right.
It's about playing the long game,
Okay.
observing your opponents, identifying their weaknesses,
Yeah.
waiting for that opportune moment
Right.
to make your move.
It's like that classic image of the chess player just contemplating their next move.
Yes.
Right. Thinking several steps ahead.
Thinking several steps ahead.
They're not just reacting to what's happening right now on the board.
Right?
They're anticipating how the other person might respond,
Yes.
planning their counter move, always trying to stay one step ahead.
Now, this next point might make some people uncomfortable.
Okay.
But Greene argues that morality can be a smokescreen.
Okay, that sounds a little ominous.
Right.
Unpack that one for us. How can morality be a smokescreen?
Well, it's easy to get caught up in judging people's intentions,
Right.
to believe that everyone who talks a good game is actually operating from this place of integrity.
Right.
But Greene cautions against this.
Okay.
He argues that focusing too much on people's stated intentions can blind us to the actual effects of their actions.
So it's like someone using these lofty moral arguments
Yes.
to justify actions that ultimately benefit themselves
Exactly.
at the expense of others.
They might be incredibly convincing, even appear genuinely altruistic.
Right.
But if you take a step back and look at the outcomes, who's really winning here?
Right.
Who's losing?
Yeah.
A very different picture might emerge.
So how do we avoid getting fooled by these moral facades then?
Right.
How do we develop that kind of discernment?
Greene would say it starts with understanding the cost of engagement.
Okay.
He argues that we should be very, very deliberate about where we choose to invest our time, our energy, our emotional capital.
Okay.
Not every battle is worth fighting.
It's like that old saying, pick your battles wisely.
Exactly.
Because if we're constantly engaging in every conflict, every power struggle,
Yes,
we'll
sir.
just be exhausted.
You'll be depleted.
Right.
and no closer to achieving your own goals.
And that discernment, that ability to choose your battles wisely,
Yes,
requires a deep understanding of human behavior.
it does.
Right.
Greene stresses the importance of studying people,
Okay.
even those closest to us,
Oh, wow.
to try to decipher their motivations, their vulnerabilities,
Mm.
their own unique relationship to power.
So it's like becoming an amateur psychologist.
Yes.
But instead of diagnosing disorders, we're trying to decode people's agendas
Yes.
and understand how they might try to influence us.
Exactly.
But this doesn't mean we have to become completely cynical or distrustful of everybody.
Right. Not at all.
Okay.
It's about honing our observation skills,
Right.
paying attention to those subtle cues,
Right.
those inconsistencies that reveal what's really going on beneath the surface,
Interesting.
becoming more aware of the games that people play
Right.
so that we can choose whether or not we want to play along.
And that awareness is key to mastering what Greene calls the art of indirection.
Yes.
Instead of using brute force,
Right.
it's about achieving your goals subtly, strategic,
At least strategically.
almost invisibly.
Almost invisibly.
It's about being 2 steps ahead without anyone realizing you're even playing the game.
And this ties back to our earlier discussion about the non-player. Often, those who appear the least power-hungry are the ones who have mastered this art of indirection.
Interesting.
They understand that these overt displays of power
Right.
can be met with resistance.
Right.
So they've learned to influence their surroundings more subtly,
Hmm.
nudging events in their favor without ever seeming to exert direct control.
Wow.
It's a potent reminder that these power dynamics are always at play,
Right.
even when they're hidden
Yeah.
beneath a veneer of politeness and social grace.
So it's like they're playing 4D chess
Yes,
while everyone else is still trying to figure out checkers.
exactly.
So how do we become those 4D chess masters then? It's like those non-players, they've like cracked the code
Yeah,
to this secret language that
Yeah.
most people don't even realize they're speaking.
It is a secret language.
Right.
It is. It is.
But like any language, once you understand the rules,
Right.
you can start to at least communicate more effectively.
Absolutely.
Maybe even strategically, right?
And that's the power of a deep dive like this.
Okay.
It's not about turning everybody into some master manipulator.
Right.
It's about demystifying these dynamics,
Okay.
making the invisible visible,
Right.
so we can all navigate the world with a little more awareness, a little more agency.
So it's less about winning the game of power and more about deciding like on our own terms how we want to play.
Precisely. Because here's the thing.
Okay.
And this is something Greene talks about.
Right.
Knowledge without self-awareness
Yes.
can be dangerous.
Okay.
If we're not careful, understanding these laws can lead to, a very cynical view
Yeah.
of human nature.
Right.
This belief that everyone's out for themselves,
Right.
that the ends justify the means,
Oh, I've totally met people like that. The
Well,
ones who read the 48 Laws of Power and suddenly they're like a Machiavellian mastermind.
Exactly.
Right.
That's the opposite of what Greene intends.
Right.
He actually argues that true mastery of these laws requires a deep understanding of our own motivations,
Right.
our own vulnerabilities,
Yes.
and yes, even our own shadow side.
It's like that old saying, know thyself. But in this case,
Yes.
it's not just about knowing our strengths.
Right.
It's about confronting those weaknesses.
Yes.
Right.
Confronting the weaknesses.
Those parts of ourselves that might be tempted to abuse power. But
Exactly. Because if we're not aware of our own capacity for manipulation, for ruthlessness,
right.
we're that much more likely to fall prey to those tendencies ourselves.
So it's almost like these laws are like a double-edged sword.
They are a double-edged sword.
Right. They can be used for good or for evil,
No.
depending on the intentions
The intent.
of the person who's wielding them.
I'm the wielder. Exactly.
Right. And that brings us back to like my earlier question.
Yes.
How do we become those 4D chess masters without,
Yes.
losing sight of our own ethical compass?
Yes, yes. And I think the answer lies in how we choose to apply this knowledge.
Yeah.
Do we use it to manipulate and control others?
Right.
Or do we use it to build genuine connections, to create those win-win situations,
Right.
to navigate these complex social dynamics with more grace and awareness?
So it's not just about understanding the rules of the game. It's about deciding like
Yes.
what kind of player we want to be.
What kind of player you want to be?
Do we want to be the one who's always trying to get ahead, even if it means stepping on people?
Right.
Or do we want to use our understanding of power to maybe empower others?
Yes.
To try to create a more, I don't know, just an equitable playing field.
And that is the question that each listener has to answer for themselves.
Right.
There's no easy answer, no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
But by engaging with these ideas, by examining our own relationship with power,
Yes.
we can start to make more conscious choices, more ethical choices in our lives.
So there you have it, folks. A deep dive into the world of power dynamics
Yes.
with Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power. We talked about the subtle art of influence, the importance of emotional mastery,
Right.
the dangers of those moral facades, the need for self-awareness.
It's all interconnected.
And now we turn it over to you, the listener.
Yes.
How will you use this knowledge?
That's the question.
Will you be a pawn in someone else's game? Or will you step into your own power and become the architect of your own destiny? The choice is yours.